I'm excited to welcome this week's Tiara Talk Show guest, the mother in Two Brothers in the American Adventure, Louise Hirshberg, to the show. Welcome, Louise.
Thank you. Thank you.
It's
Fun to be here.
It's an honor. Last November, we had spoken to Jeff Burke and John Olson about being the Two Brothers, and that was just something that my mind was blown. The fact that they've never been reunited ever since they did that photo shoot with you as the mother. And we were talking during the conversation, and we knew that the gentleman who played the father, I'm blanking on his name, so my apologies, but he had passed away. And the two little girls, there was like no information about them. And we could only get a name for the mother. And just happenstance that a couple people I'd interviewed knew who you were. And we got connected. So I'm blessed and very grateful that we are connected today.
It's certainly interesting. I can tell you about the two little girls. They were little paid actresses. They were twins. And they were literally paid people, which is why we all ended up paid, because they did. And because they were twins, little children can't be on a set for long, so they put one in and then they put the other one in.
Yeah. Well, that was actually one of the things we talked about, and we can start right into that if that's okay with you, with Two Brothers. But what they had said was it was a difficult shoot because you had the baby on your lap and then the older 6-year-old girl. And apparently, I had heard through a couple of different Imagineers, I was trying to fact check here, that they, yes, as you said, they were like paid actresses. They weren't, usually they would do somebody who was an Imagineer or an Imagineer's child. Actually, no. And the funny thing that you bring up is the little girl. I was telling the guys that the older little girl, we were actually, Ali Olmo, the singer of Two Brothers, and I were at the American Adventure. She actually had never seen the show before in person. So she and I went there in October of 2019, and we were the last ones there for the night. And so it was an honor that we got to stay a little bit extra with some of the 4 cast members who usually are planted there. And they said that the little girl, the 6-year-old, had come by about 2-3 years ago to see the show, and she was like, that's me, and she wanted a picture with her audio animatronic, and they were like, well, we can't stop the show. But that always stuck in that always stuck in my mind, because she's out there and she knows who she is. So I don't know if anybody knows who she is, but let me know if you can. I'm sure Louise wants to know who it is too. But yeah, that's the mystery there. But we solved the mystery of who the mom is, which is you, which is great.
Well, I was not an actor. I just happened to wander by.
So they said to you, it was like an Imagineer who said, hey, we're kind of going for this Civil War plot, and you have this look, and we'd love for you to be in the show. Is that kind of how it...
Oh, literally, I was working at WED in the purchasing department, and I literally walked through the parking lot, and one of the designers looked at me and said, hey, would you come into my office? I need to sketch an older face. That's exactly. I knew nothing about it. So I said, sure. So I sat in his office and he sketched my face. And then a few weeks later, he called me back and said, I need you to come in again. And by then he was sculpting my face. I never knew anything more about it. Then somebody said to me, they're making you some clothing, some dresses. And so eventually I then got a phone call. I needed to go to Disneyland and have a fitting for a dress. Well, they fitted me for a couple of dresses. I still didn't know much about it. And then somebody said, that each one of these dresses cost at least $2,000. I think there were 4 dresses.
Oh, my
which
goodness.
Put me in shock. Yeah, it was totally shocking. And then the last thing I knew was I got a note, would I please be at Disneyland at 6:30 in the morning for, I guess they said for a filming, but they didn't tell me any more about it than that. And I arrived, and that's all I knew.
The photos that appear in that sequence, a couple of them are at Disneyland. So the one is at the train station near Frontierland, I think. and it's the sequence, it's that photo where it's the coffin, they're loading the brother who passed away. So is that the sequence you're referring to?
I believe so. And the thing that really threw me was they had painted the train station a green, I think it was. And when we were done, they were already repainting it so that when the park opened at 9, the train station would be back to the normal color.
What? Now that's something, because it's a black and white photo too.
Yeah, they did not miss a heartbeat. Money was nothing. Everything had to be absolutely perfect, and it just threw my mind. That's why we went so early, so that they could get the train station back into working in the park. You would never go into the park and see painters painting.
Oh no, yeah, that's a no. Do you remember?
The thing that's interesting for me is I have twin sons myself, and so here I am in the Civil War scene with one son coming back and one not, and it was pretty heartfelt for me to think that I had two sons who were about that age, Civil War, could have gone into the Army.
And there were a couple there. I have to send them to you because I forgot to send. I have the train photos. I don't know if they came through in that email I sent you, but they were like other people who were there on the set, including the 6-year-old girl. And I didn't know for sure. Do you think they were other Imagineers that were just brought in that day to fill in for the scene, you think?
Oh, no, because I actually was talking to them. They were, what do you call it in California? They work by the day.
Oh, like background actors? Like the...
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because I had never been... I have nothing... I'm from Boston. I know nothing about the movie business. And it was quite fascinating because while we were hanging around, they would run to a phone to get their job for the next day. And I was just fascinated with this. They were extras. They were paid extras.
That's amazing.
Yeah. And this is how they lived. They went from job to job. And, they weren't very excited about it. I was very excited. I was in these fancy clothes. It was really fun.
Gosh, you look... That dress looked fantastic. It was like, wow, just... the outfits you got to wear and the time period they set it in. Because originally, I remember my dad and I loved the sequence so much. We always thought that they were just photos that the Imagineers found and said, okay, let's craft something around the photos. Lo and behold, they're shooting them there at Disneyland.
And you realize that those $2,000 dresses, which today would probably be $6,000, they were used for one shoot, and that was it.
And that's unbelievable. You think they reused them?
Oh, they did everything. Everything was done there because, I know this from the purchasing end. If a designer designed something, you had to be made to match their drawings, which blew my mind.
It's amazing. And that setup, the train building is still there to this day because it was funny. I found out this information a year after I went to Disneyland for the first time, and we were waiting for the train, and I noticed the building and the sign is different. I think they put up a different name, and I remember reading that they had to photograph it at such an angle because the Haunted Mansion is right behind it. So right, so yeah.
Right.
Just amazing. Like that's the cool part about being an Imagineer or just working on one of these attractions. It's like that you really there's such a great amount of people, smart individuals putting these things together. It's fantastic.
And perfection. It was everything was perfection. And I don't know if they told you, but one man organization had to approve of every single thing that was done. That was John Hench. Every design, everything that was done went in front of him. And he had worked with Walt Disney. And so the talk around WED was always, well, this is the way Walt wanted it. Walt wanted it this way. So
yeah.
And everything was absolutely total perfection.
To a T. And so Jeff and John were talking about the next shoot, which was the photograph, the portrait that is so well known. And apparently this was done on like a sound stage, and they got you guys all dressed up all together. And the thing that the guys said that they felt bad for you because you had the baby on your lap, and that was a lot to handle because she did not want to be on your lap. Do you remember this?
No. No, I don't remember. I just remember the train shoot. No. But if you say so, it was quite a while ago.
Yeah, they said that the photographer said to everybody, including the 6-year-old, just look this way, because once we get that baby shot of just looking this way, we got to take it. So you guys had to stay frozen.
It was 6-year-old. She was very cute. She was there with her tutor. I mean, it was like filming a whole movie for this one teeny segment.
Which is
unbelievable. She couldn't be there without a tutor or somebody to represent, children. Her mother was also there. They made it. It was a big deal for how many seconds does this all happen?
Like,
so I'm glad
probably
everybody
10.
likes
it. But it's ingrained in everybody's mind.
Yeah, and just multiply it by every other segment that you see at Disney. Everyone had this much care and love put into them.
I didn't know this until, again, my first trip to Disneyland. That sequence is so impactful. They picked it up out of American Adventure. They put it in the Great Moments with Mr. Lincoln in Disneyland around the...
Oh, really?
Yeah, the late 2000s. That's when they put it in.
Really? Well, I'll have to get out to California someday and see it.
We were shocked. We were like, wait, are we in the American Adventure? Are we back in Epcot? It was crazy because we were like, they're using the song, they're using the pictures. And did you ever get to see it in person?
Yes. Yes, because I eventually, when Epcot was finished, they brought me back to Florida to work. So I used to go into Epcot all the time just to eat because the food was better than Orlando's food. So we we went in all the time into the park.
What was the country of choice if you could pick any to eat at?
Well, I had moved from Los Angeles. When you move from Los Angeles to Orlando, Florida, in the, 70s, 80s, Orlando had nothing but fast food. So probably the French and the Italian, anything. Even the English was, and of course it was a standard menu, but it kept me alive. Moving from Los Angeles to Orlando, Florida is very difficult, I can tell you that. So,
yeah, I remember they were trying to make that a thing. Remember when MGM Studios became a live studio, and then after a couple years it just wasn't working because nobody wanted to be in Florida.
Exactly.
Which I get.
No, it was, of course it's changed now, but
you were eating around the world before that was a thing at Epcot.
Right, exactly.
Setting the trails, weren't you, Louise?
They were wonderful to us. I would go to Epcot while they were building it every once in a while for work, and they put us up in River Country. We had our own little trailers out there in Disney World. It was wonderful. They treated us very well, I have to say. They couldn't have treated us better.
What was your reaction when you finally saw it in person? Did it make sense now, since they really didn't give you much information about it originally? Did it make sense when it was all in front of you put together?
Yes, it made sense, and it was a very sad thing, I thought, and that's maybe because I did have sons, and I think that was just about the time when the draft. You couldn't go to college if you didn't sign up for the draft, and one of my sons signed up and one didn't. So it brought it right to home for me.
I never thought of it in that way.
Yeah. No. Well, I have to have sons the age of going to war. It was such a horrible war that's war. So yeah. I know it was very moving. And then of course to have yourself go up and down, it was kind of ludicrous. Like the fame for life.
Well, I was planning, the 50th anniversary of just Walt Disney in general is in October, and I was planning on taking like just a solo trip because I wanted to do that tour that I think it's like a 4, 6 hour tour where you end and watch the American Adventure from downstairs and how it works.
Oh, yeah.
I just want to do it so
That's
badly.
the exciting part. I used to go out all the time and just go underground. The underground is so exciting there of everything. It's a whole city, and it's amazing. The costume department's enormous. It's just huge. And if you can take a tour of that anytime, grab it.
I'm hoping that maybe they might lift some restrictions by the fall. We'll see. I'll let you know.
Right. Yes,
John was telling me that when the attraction opened, this was something I didn't know, was that they had postcards with some of the scene photos on them. So one of them was of him dead, which is weird. Yeah.
Oh.
And one was the family as well too. And I didn't know for sure if you remember this or possibly do you remember having a copy or did Disney give you a copy?
I don't remember that. I didn't get that. We had a book that they gave, a huge book on Epcot, but I don't remember that. Did they tell you about the opening of Epcot?
No, I haven't heard.
Fantastic party. There's about 7 top orchestras. One right in the big dome, the big. You could take a ride and listen to music and dancing and food everywhere. It was amazing, especially when you're from Massachusetts and you're not used to this whole California thing.
I get that, yes.
Yes. My work was with other departments, and they even sent, I think I told you, I had to buy all the different lampposts, which was horrendous because every foreign country had a different lamppost, and they weren't getting done. And so Disney sent engineers down into the factories to make sure that they got them done in time. They sent plane loads over to Hong Kong to get the carpet over. I mean, it just had to open on time. Yeah, it was.
Jeez. So they were down to the wire too.
Oh, of course. Any of these things are down to the wire. You know they're going to be. I had to get all the different lights for all the different pavilions. Every light had a different artist drawing. And the person who made them swore they could get them done in time. Well, he went to the hospital. He was so overworked. But done. Disney would send their own people over to these factories to get them done. It was pretty amazing. And of course, they brought in so many people. I came in the beginning, and then every time you went to work, there was another cubicle, and somebody else had come into work.
So you were talking about the furnishings. Is this the first kind of technical job you had with Disney? Like, how did you get this particular role?
I think it was all about timing. As I said, I was from Boston, and I was sick of the cold, and my youngest my twins, were away at school, and so somebody called me, and a headhunter, and said they were looking for someone who would go to Florida and California, and I thought, oh boy, I could do that. Why he came to me, I have no idea. I often thought it was because I was a woman, but then I did meet somebody who gave the headhunter my name, and I had done this person a lot of favors, and I don't know, he just threw my name out. And as I said, the time was absolutely right. I wanted out of Boston. California sounded perfectly wonderful to me, so that's how I got it. And the funny part, which has nothing to do with what you're interested in, is I had to go to Florida for the interviews, and Florida everything was about your supervisor and what you wore and your color of your nails. So I was interviewed at purchasing, and then they sent me to the employment department. And at that point, my hair was streaked. I had blonde streaks. And she said to me, well, if you go to work for us, you'll have to change your hair color. That was the mentality in Florida. And I just laughed. I said, I couldn't believe that anybody would say that. So when I went back to purchasing, and Mr. Rowland said, "Well, what do you think?" I said, "I don't think I can work for you because I have the wrong color hair." And then you go out to WED in California, and everybody is, weirdly dressed and imagination and crazy, and it was so unlike Florida. So that's how I got. That's how I got there.
I'm sure everything was very difficult to either obtain or make copies of or anything like that. But what was one of those finds that you really were like, you screamed for joy? You're like, oh my gosh, I got it. I got the right furnishing, the right perfect thing for this, pavilion or for this attraction.
Well, one of the fun things, we needed a car. No, I'm sorry, a gas tank. So two of us flew to South Dakota because somebody had this gas, a gas tank of the age. And as we're flying in, I forgot which town, there was nothing. It was absolutely nothing. And I said to him, "When can we leave here?" Well, we couldn't because we had no plane that day. So we flew and we met this man who literally, he had the right gas tank, and then we had dinner. So I said, "What do you do here in this town?" And he said, "The mall." He sent us to the mall. Well, we didn't want to do that. But it was just so amazing me to fly all the way, spend all that money to get this one gas tank.
Was that the one that's in the American Adventure, or was that featured somewhere else?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Wow.
And again, it had to be perfect for the time and the date, and had to fit the period. And I'm not sure how it was discovered, but we had to fly out to look it over, pick it up, bring it home. Yeah, it's a great old thing.
See, that's what I would love to do, is just be able to get on stage. Well, there's no stage. It's like, it's sets, really. And be able to see, like, the individual set pieces, because they all have a story, because this was one of the biggest projects that WED had been working on at the time. And it really lived up to its potential.
And again, the way they were all designed was, there was a project, there were designers on it. I worked with interior designers. There were about 7 or 8 of them. They each had a different project. They would design it, and then it had to be purchased to match their drawings, which, I'm from the hotel world where you save money. That meant every lantern had to be just exactly the way they designed it. If there was one similar, that wouldn't do. And then every single drawing went to John Hench, the head of WED, and he had to approve it.
Do you remember any other attractions that you might have worked on besides the American Adventure?
Well, I did all any attraction that had a restaurant, a large area. I bought all the carpeting and all the tables and chairs, auditorium seats, on all of them. And it was so weird for me. I came from the hotel world where you bought, 8,000 yards of carpet. I was shopping for perhaps a room 10 by 12. And when I worked for the hotels, I was considered an important buyer. When I worked for Disney, here I am trying to buy 10 yards of carpeting. I wasn't very important to anybody, and I would laugh. I took our designers into the design building in Los Angeles. We went marching in like we were big deals, and they totally ignored my designers, and I was just laughing. And they were working with Mr. and Mrs. Housewife on their house, and I kept thinking, they have no idea how much money these few women represent, but they're just not buying in large quantities. It was a very interesting, it was a fun experience. I'm looking at the opening night that I told you about, and the 6 bands. These were the bands that were there. Pete Fox, Bob Crosby, Glenn Miller, the Modernaires, Harry James and his big band, Lionel Hampton, Woody Herman, This is just opening night for the employees.
Now that's what I call a party, okay? I wish there was more film footage of this, but again, it's 1982, right? So, they probably only had a little bit of it filmed.
And you have to think about this too when I'm talking about sourcing these things. You couldn't Google. There wasn't, Google didn't exist. The what do they call the prop people? They had resources all over the country that they would send out looking for items, and the things from the different pavilions. For example, Germany, you had to buy from those countries because they had to, or match them up. The French bistro chairs had to exactly match the French bistro chair of the designer, not one that you could buy on the marketplace. Yeah, it was it was very costly and very perfect. And I think, everybody has enjoyed it, and it stood up well because of it.
What do you think of, now it's 40 years since the attraction was released. It's still there. It's probably one of the last remaining attractions untouched completely that has been left alone at Epcot since opening day. So what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I haven't been back to Epcot in years, so I have no idea what's happened there. I'm thrilled that it's there because, unfortunately, my granddaughter was terrified, and I took her into Walt Disney World, and she screamed. She was so terrified. So I'm hoping that it will last, so that now that she's 19, maybe she can go and see Grandma. I think that's pretty exciting. It's kind of one of those funny accomplishments that you don't tell people about, you don't think about, but there's not many of us who are figures going up and down for an audience many times a day. So I hope it holds up, and I hope my little animated figure doesn't break, and she keeps her pretty dresses on, so it will last for a while. And I think the war story is very appropriate, certainly. It was a horrible war, and wars are horrible, so I think it's up with the times. I sent my son one of the pictures that you sent me today, and he said, whoever thought that Disney would be the keeper of the American history, which is interesting.
Before we end, I have 3 Disney-themed questions I ask each of my guests. I call them the Fab 3. So we'll start with the Donald question, which is, as a child, what Disney film was one of your favorites to see in the movie theater?
Snow White. Terrified me, but it was the first movie I ever saw in my life.
And our Goofy question, what Disney character do you think would be your best friend if you met them in person?
Well, I don't know. I've always been partial to Minnie Mouse.
And speaking of Mickey, our Mickey question. If I asked you to name any Disney song at this very moment, what immediately comes to mind?
Small World.
Oh, you know what, Louise? I can't thank you enough for being on the show today. These were great stories, and I know the fans are going to flip after hearing this interview when I finally post it. So this was such a pleasure. Thank you so much, and for being a part of this Two Brothers legacy. People see you day in and day out when the parks are open, obviously. So you're in our conscious.
My autograph.
You better. I want to get an autograph for sure.
Ain't nothing gonna ruin today. We're all together. That's what counts.